Well, I made a quip about starting 5 minutes late, but we might start 5 minutes early. I once got on a train in Italy as it was just starting to leave 5 minutes early. I think it was actually 55 minutes late, though. Because it was Italy. Hi. I'm Joffrey Peters. I think most of you know me. I'm Leslie Wanner's son. Mom was to me equal parts mind and body, both a constant blur of action. This was both inspiring and exhausting. She lived with this concert of mind and body carefully tuned. Her mind sped her body through woods and fields, over mountains, in the snow. Her body carried her mind to new places, giving it new senses to explore, to delight. It was thus with great pain that we watched her mind slip from her disease, and thus that we began to mourn her loss together with her even as she lived. Yet, while we mourned, we celebrated her life. Family, friends, colleagues, all gathered and shared in the things she loved the most. And that's what draws us together today, both to grieve her tremendous loss and ours, also to celebrate the tremendous gifts she gave to us. Thank you all for coming to remember what a wonderful woman was Leslie Wanner. As outlined in the program, which I guess we have too few of, a number of you would like to share some of your memories of Leslie with us today. Interspersed, we'll have a few songs, and afterward we'll have some snacks, and you can look at some lovely pictures from Mom's life while chatting and eating. Two things Mom loved. After that, we'll do some music. Her sister and brother-in-law will lead us in a sing-along. And if you don't want to stay for that bit, you're welcome to go, but we love to sing, and so did Mom. With that, we'll start with a song that she sang to my sister Rachel and I pretty frequently as we grew up.
And flows of angel hair, and nice dream castles in the air, and feather canyons everywhere. I looked at clouds that way, but now they only block the sun. They rain and snow on everyone. So many things I would have done, but clouds got in my way. I looked at clouds from both sides now, from up and down, and still somehow it's clouds' illusions I recall. I tears and fears and feeling proud to say I love you right out loud. Dreams and schemes and circus crowds, I've looked at life that way. But now old friends are acting strange. They shake their heads, they say I've changed. Well, something's lost, but something's gained in living every day. I've looked at life from both sides now, from win and lose, and still somehow it's life's illusions I recall. I really don't know life at all. I've looked at life from both sides now, from up and down, and still somehow it's life's illusions I recall. I really don't know life at all.
Good morning, everyone. Good, I have a microphone. I talk very, very well. I'm so glad that you guys could all be here. I am Rachel. I'm Leslie's daughter, for those of you I do not know. This morning, I'd like to share with you some verses that over the past weeks have spoken to me in hopes that they may also speak to you. The first two are from a collection called The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. Your pain is the breaking of the shell that encloses your understanding. Even as the stone of the fruit must break, that its heart may stand in the sun, so must you know pain. And could you keep your heart in wonder at the daily miracles of your life, your pain would not seem less wondrous than your joy. And you would accept the seasons of your heart, even as you have always accepted the seasons that pass over your fields. And you would watch with serenity through the winters of your grief. Your joy is your sorrow unmasked, and the selfsame well from which your laughter rises was oftentimes filled with your tears. And how else can it be? The deeper sorrow that carves into your being, the more joy you can contain. Is not the cup that holds your wine the very cup that was burned in the potter's oven? And is not the lute that soothes your spirit the very wood that was hollowed with knives? When you are joyous, look deep into your heart, and you shall find it is only that which has given you sorrow that is giving you joy. When you are sorrowful, look again in your heart, and you shall see that in truth you are weeping for that which has been your delight. Some of you say, joy is greater than sorrow, and others say, nay, sorrow is the greater. But unto you I say, they are inseparable. Together they come, and when one sits alone with you at your board, remember that the other is asleep upon your bed. The third reading is a poem by Mary Oliver, and it's titled In Blackwater Woods. Look, the trees are turning their own bodies into pillars of light, are giving off the rich fragrance of cinnamon and fulfillment. The long tapers of cattails are bursting and floating away over the blue shoulders of the ponds. And every pond, no matter what its name is nameless now. Every year, everything I've ever learned in my lifetime leads back to this. The fires and the black river of loss, whose other side is salvation, whose meaning none of us will ever know. To live in this world, you must be able to do 3 things. To love what is mortal, to hold it against your bones, knowing your own life depends on it, and when the time comes, to let it go, to let it go. Thank you.
As most of you know or could guess, I'm Jim Wanner, Leslie's dad, and I do have some memories that she would have remembered too, and a few that were too early for her to remember. But the idea that I would have here is that I hope that my memories and reflections can contribute to the celebration of a life of a remarkable woman. Early memories of mine, one of those was prenatal to Leslie, so she probably wouldn't have remembered it anyway. But what happened there was that Mama Peggy was caught in the throes of morning sickness pretty regularly for some weeks, and Daddy Jim was trying to go to law school, and that wasn't working out because I had sympathetic morning sickness. I don't know if that's a legitimate technical phrase, but I thought I did have it. In any case, that one was an early, and one that was also, only slightly earlier, and I told Joff I really wish I could find the picture. In those days, pictures were not quick, and they weren't automatic, and we had box brownie cameras that once in a while we took pictures, and every other year we got them developed. But this one, we lived in an apartment in East Cleveland when I was in law school, and she was teaching at Little Italy, Murray Hill, on the east side of Cleveland, a city unto itself. And anybody who's ever been in Cleveland probably knows it's there, and many people have gone to its restaurants and its celebrations. And not many of them went to Murray Hill High School, or grade school, and junior high, but she did, and she loved it. And the memory that I have is that early on in her babyhood, when she was obviously still in diapers, I put my hand under the bottom of her diaper and held her up as high as I could get it. Not sure that was a big thrill for Peggy, but Leslie loved it and chortled and giggled, and so that memory is, you couldn't find the picture, Jock, but that memory is clean and clear to me. I guess in the order of timing, Leslie was she had some troubles early in infancy. She had colic for quite a few weeks, and ultimately that, I think the part of the cause for that was that she wasn't getting enough food in the system. And when we got that caught up, she stopped having that problem and didn't have any more colic cries, and did what babies are supposed to do. I don't think she crawled much. I think she probably started walking and running before most people crawled. Anyway, she was able to talk well before a year and to walk in about a year. And somehow or another, shortly after that, there was another event in our family and her family, and that is that her parents brought a bundle home from the hospital named Susie. And that was at Leslie's 15-month age group. And she looked at Susie, kind of startled, and broke into serious crying for quite a few minutes, and then turned it off like it was a spigot, and stopped being the baby of the family or the baby anywhere ever thereafter. She somehow decided that she was going to have responsibility, and she had it her whole life in spades, to a point where I'm sure her siblings will remember that if there were things around the house, which there were, scattered up and down the hallways, it never should have been there. I mean, how many dirty socks can you have in a hallway in a house and not do something about it? The siblings didn't pick the damn things up. But Leslie did. If there were dishes in the sink that needed washing, she washed them. If there were chores that needed doing, she did them, without being asked in both of those cases. And not too long later in her life, she began to show some signs of being really a persevering person with her own body. She wanted it to be active. She also wanted to demonstrate to the world that she was going to be an environmentalist of some stature. And one of those things that really tickled us a lot, we lived in Berea, Ohio, and when Les was in junior high school, it was Rame Junior High, kind of across the town and past the campus of Baldwin Wallace College, and quite a little walk. I'm not sure what it was, a couple miles. And every day the school bus went by our house and stopped and would have picked up Leslie, stopped and picked up all the other kids. And then, of course, it had diesel smoke, so it was not pleasant then. It wasn't to her, and so she wouldn't ride it. She'd walk to school instead. The bus went by anyway. She walked to school and demonstrated to the world that she was complaining that those school buses shouldn't have been used. And I guess not too often much longer than that, when she got old enough to be I'm sure she realized that she wanted to get around our nation the way she ended up doing. You had to be a driver. You just can't do it without having wheels and be behind the wheel. And it turns out that her driver's ed class, in those days you had a driver's ed class. I mean, they provided it, you didn't have to buy it. Anyway, the teacher of that apparently was pretty abusive, and she couldn't stand it. And so she's the only kid I ever knew who flunked out of driver's ed. I don't know how she got her license, but she ultimately did. I don't think she cheated. That was unlike her. There are some other things that I'd kind of like to do here. She was not the quickest of our kids on foot, and she was not the quickest in sprint swimming. The other girls were all quicker, and quite a bit quicker. But if you wanted to put your money on somebody in an endurance type swim, you'd probably do a lot worse than to pick her, because she could swim all day. Didn't matter. Wasn't a sprint, but she could swim whatever, crawl stroke mostly, but she just swam and swam and swam and seemed to enjoy it. One other little story about the swimming. We had, as a family, we had all swum across Platte Lake at our Michigan home. And the four girls and Daddy were swimming, and Mama Peggy was rowing the big wide bottomed wood rowboat across the lake as the crash boat and to take us all home. And there was a time that apparently that rubbed off on both Leslie and Rachel. And so one day Rachel and Leslie got over there, and I was running a pontoon boat around just to see that they were safe. They decided to swim back across the lake, which from Birch Point is probably 1.75 miles, not such a wonderful deal in the world of channel swims, but most families don't do it every day. Leslie and Rachel swam, we got almost shoulder to shoulder across the lake. And they didn't swim cross stroke, they swam breaststroke because they were in conversation the whole way. And they laughed and they chatted, and I'm driving in circles around them, wondering what is it with these kids, why don't they swim? Now another story that has not too much to do with Leslie. I think Joff was in a pontoon boat, and he wasn't interested in swimming across the lake. But ceremonially, we left him off at the log, which is about a little over 1/4 mile out, and he swam in from the log and got back home at the same time that the girl swimmers. But I think that was at least another example of what happens when there's persistence. And I don't know, maybe you're putting up with too many of my old stories, but another one that was really dramatic was, and it's always been an indelible memory to me, was when she was a late teenager and worked at the Cherry Hut, I think, one summer, and was so far in Michigan all summer long. And Peg and Jim and other girls tried to get there as much as we could, but it wasn't all the time. One morning, Dan and Di Lindsay will recognize that Brother Tom got sick and tired of the silly requirements that Ohio had on the canoe that he wanted to use in the Scioto River. It had to have a horn and it had to have a fire extinguisher, and he didn't like that stuff. So he contributed the canoe, which is still up there. It's an aluminum, I suppose, 16-footer, and it's fondly called Tippy, T-I-P-P-E. That's its name, right on the front of the boat. Anyway, Les looked at me one day, and the southwest wind was coming dead into us, straight across the lake, and said, "Do you think we could get the canoe out?" And I kind of looked at her like, why would you even want to try it? There were absolutely no other traffic on the lake, 0. And we guessed later on that was a 50-mile wind right into us. So we took off everything that you could, but a swimsuit. If you had a watch, you took it off. If you had a ring, you took it off. You certainly didn't have shoes. You might as well not have had knee pads, because it was all going to leave anyway. Anyway, we got going, and we were going dead into the wind, and we knew we had to. If you went off the wind 2 degrees, the ship was going to be sideways and upside down in no time at all. We did miss a couple times. We wobbled a little and got partway off and eventually recovered it. And the day was so tough that the waves, instead of being monster waves, the 50-mile wind spin drifted the top of the waves off. It knocked them off. And so we were in between pretty wide wave distances, longer than the canoe. So the canoe would go up one of those things and hang it airborne, and eventually slop down in between the next wave, and the next wave would come all over everything, all over us and into the canoe. So it was quite a day. We went that way for probably, maybe close to a mile, and still held on to the dead end of the wind thing. And she said, "What do you think? Can we make it over to Birch Point?" And I said, "Boy, I sure hope so. We can hide behind Birch Point." So we made a half-right turn, and by that time the waves were low enough because the across the lake hillsides had shielded enough that the waves weren't so big. Anyway, we got over there, and we got out, and guess what? We swam for a little fun over there at Birch Point, and got back in, and downstream, downwind, it's no problem at all. You could just hear the shoosing sound of the canoe sliding down the waves. And she looked at me and said, how long do you think it'll take to get home, Dad? And I said, "Not more than 10 minutes." So, so anyway, that's another canoe story. And I did want to say that she was very, very proficient at a lot of things. She loved walking and did it well. She jogged and did it well. She ran a marathon at one time in Detroit and got within not very many seconds. She finished. She hit the wall and slowed down and walked a while, but she went and finished. And at the end of it, her final time was only a few seconds off what would have qualified for a woman at that time in the Boston Marathon. So
He qualifies today.
it would qualify
I think
today.
we qualify today.
Okay, well, not everybody in the family has run the dumb things anyway. Daddy hasn't. My half marathons, most I did. Joel did, wherever Joel is. He ran one out in the canyons out in Salt Lake City, up the canyon and down the canyon. I can't imagine doing that. I ran there one day, and maybe I went 3 miles up and 3 miles back, and the back was worse than the down because it was downhill all the way back to town. Anyway, I better find a way to get out of here. Oh, I wanted to say that as an amazing thing, Leslie visited our summer place, the Ark, 4 times last summer. Once with family at the end of May to help start the ship up. Once in the middle of June, which was kind of surprising, but came back in good part to be with me. And we spent delicious time doing things like visiting Crystal Gardens, and she picked out the flowers she wanted to have in the planter, and in the front flower bed, and in a memorial to my dad. It's a wheelbarrow buried in the front bank. And so we bought stuff for all of those things, and that was, and she made that as a contribution. That was one thing she wanted to do. Anyway, that was, and then she came back in, I think it was the 5th or so of July, in 4th of July.
She was there.
Oh, we were there on the 4th of July, weren't we? Anyway,
That's
then,
missing to the police the day before.
yeah. Anyway, I think in good part Leslie was there because she wanted to drive me to Grand Traverse Regional Medical Center because I was supposed to get a needle biopsy of my prostate, and everybody thought that was horrible, so did I. And interestingly, it wasn't so much the needle, they got little stings and a little quick, and those were going to happen. But what nobody told me is that they were going to have to find a way to twist the thing around, get the needle to the other side, and in so doing, it pushed against the bladder, and I was afraid lying on my hip with no clothes on my lower body, and Leslie sitting in the chair right over there. I was afraid I was going to get her all wet. It didn't work out that way. So that was 3 of her visits, and she came back again on the 6th of September and was there for my birthday on the 7th. After a pretty tough drive from up to Maine to do the potato thing, and across to Ottawa to visit Amelia, and across the rest of Ontario and the Blue Water Bridge, and across the thumb of Michigan and up to her. She was pretty late at the end of the day getting there, pretty tired. It's a long day's drive. But she was more active then than anybody I can remember in a week's time. She jogged a little bit, she walked a little bit, she swam at least twice a day, every day in Platte Lake, and every chance she could get in Lake Michigan, and every chance she could get in the mouth of the Platte River as it empties into Lake Michigan. She kayaked quite a bit. She biked a little bit. The kayaking thing, I didn't know, she was going to take the kayak out to the east end of the lake to see if she could find the eagle's nest. And I thought, well, that won't take too long. And I went to do whatever dumb things that grandpas do when there's nobody else around. Anyway, I thought she'd be back in 40 minutes or something like that. Well, she stopped, didn't see the eagles, so she went on past and went into the Platte River and off Dead Stream and followed the channel that was open then because the water was so deep, got almost to the bridge, and then came back poking around. So that 40 minutes turned into 2.5 hours or something like that by the time she got home. But she did all those things. When she was doing the swim in Platte River mouth, kids all enjoy it. They float down Platte River. Anybody doesn't even need to be able to float down that because the current's 4 miles and it's doing fine. She floated down with the rest of the kids, and I'm sitting in a folding chair on the side of the creek watching all this go on. And she disappeared from view, and it turns out that she went out into Lake Michigan, where the water temperature changes about 8 or 10 degrees from the water to Lake Michigan. Anyway, She walked back up the river against the current, which is a piece of work. And she got even with me, and I'm thinking she's probably going to want to go back to the ark anytime now. And she says, "Wait a minute, Dad, there's something else I want to do." And she turned around and swam hard, cross-stroke, downstream all the way out into the Lake Michigan again, and swam upstream against that current. And then she was ready to go home. So she swam. First memory of her in Platte Lake, all of our kids got to Platte Lake in their first year. And in Leslie's case, that would have been with a December birthday. She would have been maybe 7 months old when she started getting dropped into the lake a little bit. And every one of the kids sat in a Peter Babe. Some of you remember what those are, the spring type device, sort of a canvas sling and a base on it. You could bounce up and down and do a lot of things babies ought to do. Well, the kids would do that, including Leslie when she was 7 months old. We'd put it in the edge of the water, get sand on the bottom so it would stay in place, and the kids would jump up and down a little bit, and their feet would be in the lake. They were happy. They'd stay there for 2 hours at a time. Great invention, whoever did it. Also, every kid in the family went up the Sleeping Bear Dunes climb face, because that was part of the course. And so she did that as a 7-month-old. She went up with Dad in a sling over his shoulder. All the other kids ended up doing the same sling in different years. But we went up and got on the level, went half right on a thing they call Main Street. It's a little wider. You can go another mile and a half before you have to do anything. Look down at the big lake, and we came back from that. So Les got her first sand indoctrination at whatever that would be, age 7 months. And all of you other kids, some of you were just shavers. The ones with the March birthdays, they were only 3 or 4 months old when they got in the lake. Anyway, the last of Leslie's swims at Platte Lake was the morning of September 14th, which was typical. She always went swimming before leaving. Would drape the swimsuit over the car seats to dry, and did in fact swim that morning. And I think was still able to leave by 9:30, and ended up driving alone back to Kensington, which I guess it has taken some people 15 hours. It took her 10-something. I don't think she planned to do it that way, but it worked out that way. And anyway, I will stop talking about dumb stories like that. And I do want to say, though, that I've never known any human being that had more love of life in general and of the earth, in the earth, on the earth, flora, fauna. If she got her hands dirty planting things, that was swell. She was happy with all of that. And she dedicated a good part of her life to do it. She did such things. We're right next to Rock Creek Park here, aren't we? That was an escape hatch for her. She loved Rock Creek Park. She could get to it from the house on Woodson. You could easily walk to it. You could easily jog to it. And you might even have enough left that you could run up and down in the park for a while. I did a little bit before Leslie came to Washington. I was stayed at the Marriott down in Connecticut below the National Zoo and the National Cathedral, and I didn't want to run in Connecticut, so I ran up Rock Creek Park for a while and back again. One day I came home through the zoo. The doors were open. It was 6:30 in the morning. Nobody took a ticket, so I walked on, ran on through. Anyway, that was what we're supposed to be doing there in this world. I want to tell you that I am a very proud father to have had a kid who was that productive, dedicated, as many have reported, intelligent, and always looked at things positively. Never made excuses, tried really hard not to assess blame, and found something good where there wasn't much good. And I'm pleased to hold her dear as a firstborn. I think I might be permitted to do this because I'm probably as old as anybody in the room here. And I've been the patriarch of that bloodline for 62 years now. So I didn't run for the office, and this doesn't pay anything. It's not very much honor. But on the way through the thing, my mother was patriarch of the family, and probably officially since Brother Joe was born, even though there was Grandma around for a while, but she was doing things like cutting vegetables and darning socks, and Edith was the runner of the family. So she was a matriarch until she died in 1979. And then, let's see what would have happened. Peggy was a matriarch from 1979 until 2003. And then Leslie was a matriarch of that same line for another 11 years. And somehow or another, although she didn't run for it and is not going to be paid for it, the current holder of that position is Susie. Anyway, that's all. I talked way more than the schedule, so thank you for that.
And Susie will talk next, but let's see if we can move a few people through. There's a little bit of standing room on the other edge over here. It might be a little easier.
Stairs too. As a newly appointed matriarch, I have to tell you, I can't see you because I have to have these reading glasses so I can see the paper, which is probably an appropriate age to become a matriarch. Anyway, my dad took probably half my talk, so that's good news for you guys. But for the last couple months, certainly while Leslie was struggling at the end of her life, I was working on collecting thoughts and impressions, gathering memories, reading old letters. She once asked me if I saved the letters. Well, she asked me if I saved letters from people. And I don't know that I answered. It was in a letter. We actually write letters to each other because long distance was 50 cents a minute. And that's the real truth. And our dad just couldn't stand that price. And so he'd stand there like this when we were talking to people. Time, you know, and isn't that true, Dad? Totally true. You can never save enough to have a decent telephone conversation is what we found. And we ended up living in all different places. And Leslie was a great correspondent. So it's my blessing, and I know it's true of my sisters and many of her family members, to have letters from her that I can go back. And she wasn't a casual writer. She would write some newsy things, but she often would philosophize on this, that, and the other thing. And some were funny things, some were deep, deep things where I'd kind of go, wonder what she's saying there. And a lot of times they were peppered with questions so that, you know, I was prompted to write back. And basically at the end, you better write back. I need to know what you think about these deep subjects. And I love that. I love the kind of correspondence. I'm sure I wasn't anywhere near as good of a writer as she was because we didn't have all the time in the world. Nobody does. And I didn't get it all written. But I'm grateful to have those. And I'd like to say, she asked me in a letter that I read recently, do you save my letters? Do you ever read old letters? And I'm like, I'm doing it. I'm reading them. Anyway, and the folder's about this fat. And it's a great treasure for me. And I've learned a lot about her, relearned a lot about her, and, you know, kind of what made her tick. And one of the things I'd like to share with you is I just kind of wrote down bullet points about her. And I'm sure that I'll speak for my sisters a little bit, because I know that we had similar experiences. And Dad's right. She was the mother hen for us, and that was self-appointed. I was kind of a slug. because she was the mother hen. I could be, and I didn't always work at things the way I should have. I really should have taken a note from her. A couple things that really stick with me, she totally had my back. I know I can probably say that for Janie and Heidi. There was a lot of loyalty between us sisters, and we sometimes got into scrapes. Not some really serious things and some not so serious, but she was usually there, if she knew about it, to cover our back. And I'm very happy to be able to say that. She had a great example on this letter writing thing from her own mother, who would write every single week to her own mother and mother-in-law. And then the aunts, especially Hilda and Marty, wrote all the time to us, and I think both, especially Janie and Leslie, picked that up. Not so much Heidi and I. I do send funny birthday cards, I will say that. I stopped sending funny birthday cards to Leslie because I just felt bad. Anyway, but she did teach that by example, and I really appreciate that. I also wanted to tell you how much family came first with her. On my fridge, there's a magnet, and it has a saying on it that says, no success can ever compensate for failure in the home. And I don't have it there so that people come and look at my fridge and say, really, remember that, you've no success, But she felt really quite bad about that. She would say, what does that mean? Do you mean that you can't be successful? Because she was worried about her own relationships and how it was going to affect her children. And I'm sure I explained, no, it's to remind me every day. I open the fridge, I read that, and I go, remember that's true. But I know that she lived that. That was the most important thing to her in the whole world, her children. And I know, too, that her family, her extended family, all of you wouldn't be here today if, and she made friends, her family, as well. And I know that. I could go on and on and on of things I know about that she's done for others. And, I just don't worry about that. And I hope I made that clear to her that she didn't, feel bad about. She also hated missing any family occasion. That was something that just was unacceptable. And when they lived in Norway, she missed both funerals for her maternal grandparents. And I think it about killed her. She was even named after her grandpa. And so that was really hard. And I think that she had a strong yearning for perfection. And I think that in the laboratory of the family, when we do have families, that really perfection doesn't exist. But one of her strongest yearnings was to be a mother. And she made life choices so she could be one. And that finally came true, and there really was no happier person on the earth than she was when she became a mother. That's true. I was going to tell you a letter that I wrote that kind of cracked me up. Came with a package that she sent. She couldn't come out for when niece Becca got married. Where are you, Becca? I can't see. Anyway, she couldn't come out for that, and she felt bad. So she sent this care package, and inside there were cookies that our mom would have made, because she had passed away that year. And so there were cookies that she'd made. I don't even remember what kind they were. She didn't say in the letter, so I don't remember exactly. But there was banana bread, cardamom coffee cake, along with describing all of the ingredients that were in there if anyone was food allergic. It's like this big long thing about, anyway, that's the kind of thing that she would do all the time. When I got married, she'd never even met Joel until just right before the wedding. And, they had a bridal shower for me from a distance, my sisters and mom. And that was really nice. I couldn't come. It was kind of fun. And we really didn't have any video equipment either. I'm kind of old, so that was pre that. But there was a tape I could listen to, everybody opening packages. It was kind of fun. Anyway, it was a pretty good idea. And, that time, she did some things for me. She sent me this care package, this I found in the letter too, because I already have a bad memory, I guess. She sent a care package that had acne medication in it. She said, you know, this is the last thing you want on your big day. You know, have a major breakup. True that. Anyway, and then the letter goes on to describe all the ingredients and all the different Anyway, that's pretty funny. And another thing that she did on that wedding thing was she was living in Ann Arbor at the time, and we were going to honeymoon up at the Ark up in northern Michigan. And somehow she snuck away. I mean, she was working, or I don't think she was going to school right then. She was working in the lab, but she was working and she made the trip, and it had to be at least a 2-hour drive up there. And she rigged up four. Anyway, so she made the trip up there and provisioned the Ark for us when we arrived. And in the freezer, there were steaks. I remember that, thinking, well, how does she know how to buy steak? Well, she had George's help, his husband, but there were non-alcoholic champagne and a whole bunch of fruits and vegetables in the fridge. But right as you walked in the door, there was an old ice cream bucket. And as I walked in the door, I saw this bucket swinging back and forth. And we looked up, and it had been filled with macaroni. It was supposed to be rigged to drop on our head. Fail. Anyway. But that was pretty great. And as I think back about that just says so much love to me to take that time to do that. That was above and beyond, and it really means a lot to me. She worked hard on her health and taking care of her body. Everybody knows that. And she's probably, we all said it, she would be the last person you would think who would get sick and fail. And she was so programmed to do that. Beth and I were talking last night about the pedometer thing. And how many have been given a pedometer by Leslie? Show of hands. And may I ask, are you using those pedometers? Well, she was a pedometer user, and she was so dedicated to pedometer use that she had little pockets sewn in her clothing to carry her pedometer. And that's really true. That's really true. And we found, I mean, I don't think I'll tell this really personal thing on the pedometer thing, but she believed so strongly in getting exercise in every day and monitoring how many steps she took. She'd shoot for 10,000, I believe. And, towards the end, that pedometer might read 325 steps. But those were 325 hard-earned steps. And I love her for that. It's the sweetest thing to me. And my pedometer's in my drawer, but you can probably tell that. Anyway, so bless her heart. That was a great thing. And Dad talked a little bit about effort. And he was right. I mentioned here the swimming. She was just work at that, and she was not fast. She really wasn't. She didn't get to swim in most of the meets because she was kind of slow, but she enjoyed it, and she was. And I wish I'd adopted her work ethic. I'm thinking, why are you working that hard at this? It just seems like a silly thing to do. Just go out there and swim. And but anyway, she's by far more athletic in later life than I had ever thought of being. And it was because she developed those strong commitments and habits to that and taking care of her body. And I love her for that. And also she didn't have the killer instinct is another reason. And I kind of did. So anyway, and it wasn't just swimming. There were other things that she would work at, like playing the piano. We took piano lessons together, and I was a piano slug, but I had more talent than she did. And I would get to piano lessons, and I could play by ear, and I would play when I practiced, I played what I wanted. The ones I didn't like, I didn't play. I'm not proud of this. But, and she would do well because she'd just work away, and if the piano teacher told her to play this 10 times before you come in, she'd have a little, hash mark, mark it all off, and I probably did the hash marks, but I didn't play. Anyway, I'd like to ask you, who has the PhD? Anyway, so I appreciate, I know her intrepidness, whatever, that really, bore fruit in her life, and it was a great example to us. There's no question about it. She was an avid reader. And she read books until she simply couldn't anymore. And I don't remember what we had a little chat a weekend before, she really had a downturn. And she was reading a book. And I thought, that's a crazy book to read. She goes, I really need to be working. I need to be working. She always was saying that. But she was reading a book, and she started school before I did, of course, and she'd come home with her information about how to read, and I learned to read quite young because of it. And we enjoyed a lot word games through the years, all kinds of word games. Scrabble with our grandmas and mom, and word games at the table. Boggle, she loved online Boggle, and she played online Boggle. She'd text me or Google chat me and say, you want to play Boggle? Late at night. She was much more of a night owl than I was. But it was perfect because I lived 2 hours the other way, so that's good. And we'd play, and after she'd had the brain surgery, she was in the 20-word range, and just but worked at that. She goes, oh, I'm just so not good, but she was good at that. It just, she lost that speed, and anyway, I was going to read you a quote from a letter, something that she was she said, I'm in a peculiar mood this afternoon, really feeling the isolation of our existences. I happened to clean out a drawer full of old letters and the like, and read most before deciding whether to throw them away. And it made me feel how distant friends and family really are. Everyone is so far away, and friendship and close relationships are so fragile. Really, I don't know why looking at old letters gives me an uneasy feeling, a feeling of desperate aloneness in this life, but it does. Do most people save old letters? Do you? Do you ever go back and reread them? Does aloneness in this life disturb you? And then, right after that, she switched the subject. I had sent her some literature about a lawyer takes a look at the ERA, the Equal Rights Amendment. So this dates the letter was late 1981. And she went on and on and on that subject. But she was in quite a serious mood. Most of the time it was lighthearted. Anyway, one thing, she kind of referred to herself as a socialist because she was so generous. She'd say that was her reason, but I actually don't buy that. And, because, Webster defines socialism as a system of economics where there's social ownership of the means of production and cooperative management of the economy. And that she wasn't interested in controlling anyone's life. She just always felt if she had something she could give, she would give it. And she found a way to do that. So I never did get to debunk her in life on that, but I had to think about that. She was generous to a fault. And during the time that our daughter Kate lived here, when she was doing an unpaid internship here, and I do mean unpaid, no practical way to get to work, all that. She actually got up early and left and to take Kate to the metro station so she could be on time for work every day. And then let her have a car a lot of times so she could go about and do things. And Leslie's not an early morning person. Those of you who worked with her know that she wasn't in the lab early very often. So that was a terrific sacrifice, and she just did that just because she, loved her and wanted to see her succeed. And that was something that she was a lot of her letters talk about. I think you're setting yourself up for failure here. It's none of my business. But I want to see you succeed at this or this or this, and I really appreciate that. Her giving. I could tell you hundreds of ways that she's given. And there, of course, are tons more things I could say, but I do, and I miss her every day. I do regret some choices to spend time with her. We kind of worked it out so that she would come and have time with Dad. I left Dad on the 3rd of September, and Les came on the 6th. And I, wish I'd been smarter about that and just spend some time with her. We just, in that respect, you think you'll grow old together and have time to just be silly and almost revert to your childhood, and we didn't have that, and I'm sorry for that. But, everyone's losses are different things. She lived her life with a perfect brightness of hope. Even in dark, dark future, she could find a silver lining in something. And a thing that she said to Janie, the last time that she was at an organized meal at the table, we're friends, John and Fiona who were here had made a lovely meal. All of the sisters were there and Dad. and several others were there, made this beautiful meal. As we were sitting down at the table, she was in the wheelchair and, propped up and not really interested in food anymore, but she bent over and said to Janie, "Life is good." And she could look at it that way, and I bless her for that. To quote a favorite leader in my church, our destiny is not determined by the number of times we stumble, but by the number of times we stand up, dust ourselves off, and stride forward. Jimmy, this is Leslie.
Hey, Susie, did you find that last paragraph of the 1973? Read that.
Okay. In the memorabilia room, there's a copy of the freshman English paper that Leslie sent to me, and I retyped it and put some pictures in it. And did you want the whole thing?
No, the last paragraph.
I look back on my books. The wildlife of those woods is only a part of the good memories of my early childhood, but they're some of my strongest and most treasured memories. As I look back on them now, I can see that they have helped make me who I am. I still like to watch the birds and squirrels and see sunlight coming through the trees to the woodland floor. No place can ever feel like home to me unless there I find birds and animals and plants and trees. I can never thank my parents enough for providing me with such a rich and delightful source of pleasure as the outdoors is to me. I hope it will be here for my children and my children's children to grow up in and to love.
All right, I likely don't know many of you in the room. I'm Zach Lloyd. I'm Susie's oldest. I'm Jim and Peg's grandchild number 2. I'm a bit of a unicorn, as it were. Many of the family have heard of me, but very few have actually seen me. But I do exist, and I am real. And notwithstanding my own lack of presence, as it were, me, and particularly my family, was always present with Leslie. Her life, indeed, has been a tender mercy for us. I am the oldest of 5 children and see myself much like her in many ways. I'm not very talented in any one thing, but I just keep on trying to do those things until I can do them. And I have tried to model my life much after hers, and have seen the love, the loyalty, the consistency that she exhibited. But more than anything, the generosity and benevolence. Much has been mentioned of her letter writing, and that I didn't get lots of letters, but I certainly got lots of cards and notes. And those cards and notes were always filled with a gift. Now, on behalf of the 12 nieces and nephews and 15 grandnieces and nephews, we say thank you. Leslie was by far the highest paid government worker I've ever known. I'm not very good at math, that's probably why I'm a lawyer. But adding up those gifts, I'm not sure where the money came from. But I'm certainly grateful. I have 5 children of my own. And when our oldest, Layla, who is much like her Aunt Leslie, was born, Leslie gave us a gift. And this was during my last year of undergrad, and we had as happens with young families who are in school, an increasing demand curve and a very sharp decreasing supply curve in our economic climate. It doesn't take an economist to know that as the needs go up and the means go down, that lack of equilibrium creates a problem. And Leslie helped fix that problem at a time when we needed it. And we ended up buying this European stroller. It was more expensive than what we should have bought, but was what we needed. And 5 kids have come and gone, other strollers have come and gone, but even this week, that little stroller went with us and our family on an outing, And we thought of and were reminded of Leslie and the way that that gift has impacted the lives of all of my children. Now the wheels are worn down to the hubs. The bonnet is long gone, been broken off by my Herculean boys. But structurally, that stroller is reliable and therefore when we need it. And that, too, Leslie, was for us. There were times when those gifts would come in the mail and she would put on these notes about use this to go on and take your wife on a date, pay the babysitter, do those things that she knew that we needed when really we put food on the shelves, put food in the refrigerator, because that's really what we needed. But in the most recent times, she's continued to send those gifts, and we just did not have the heart to cash those checks. We've held on to them, and they're a precious reminder now of how much she cared for each of us, notwithstanding the distance, notwithstanding our own apparent indifference. We don't come around much, but she still loved and cared for us. I know that just as the bitter allows us to appreciate the sweet, grief and loss help us cling to the love and the friendship that we have and cultivate new and lasting relationships. And I pray that each of us will use this as a reminder to value and appreciate the blessings that we have from knowing one another, and particularly from the great life that she led. And on behalf of my wife and children, my siblings, my cousins, we thank you, and your mom, for all that she's given us.
Hello, my name is Dan Lindsay. As noted in the program, I'm Leslie's cousin. I'm the son of Hildegard Wanner Lindsay, Jim's sister. Throughout this whole season, this winter, and this current season we have now, we've been thinking of Leslie, and there was a call for pictures, and I want to comment on two things about pictures that I thought of when I was thinking of Leslie. One, my wife Debbie and I are lucky to have a log house 3.9 miles from the Ark in Michigan in Platte Lake, so we've had some good sharing times with the Ark and the Ark people. One of the best times of all time was in 2010, so I was looking for that picture. We were celebrating Jim's birthday, and all the four sisters were there. It was a great honor for us to have them at the Rich House in Michigan. So I was looking for that picture. I found it and I sent it to Rebecca, and I hope it might be in it, and it's a good picture. But the thing that I found in the short story I wanted to tell about that picture was the picture that was next to it that I didn't delete. And then I looked at it and I had to remember the story, because the picture, I had a perfect arrangement, Jim in the middle, two sisters on each side, Leslie next to Jim, took the picture. There's one odd thing about that picture, and that is Leslie is standing backwards when everybody else is smiling and facing forward. So the brief story is I was an over-anxious photographer that night, so we finally got this arrangement, and it was hard because it was raucous. The party was going on. And I finally got it arranged. I snapped the picture, and Leslie said, no, we weren't ready. You didn't count down. So here we go. We get the arrangement again. I'm doing 1, 3, 2, 1. And just as I snap the picture, of course, Leslie turns around back. I'm telling the story. I'm trying to think of the word for it, but you know the quality of it. Everybody who knows Leslie knows what that was. I'm going to use the word trickster. I mean it as a compliment. No matter what happened to Leslie, even in a serious situation, she could pull a stunt on you and a trick. So to finish that story, that backward picture story, I kept it and I always will. Afterwards, I said, that's it, and was walking away, and then, of course, Leslie said, no, don't count down, just take the picture. And that's in there, and I hope Rebecca got that picture too. Oh, the backwards one too? I said, Leslie was a trickster, and that, Jim said it too, I want to say it in the most positive way, a love of life, always having fun. In that situation, I think that night she had a lot of fun. So I'm very proud of that. The second thing I want to mention is then, of course, I was these pictures were in the iPhone 8, but the older pictures were in a box. So I was looking for the older pictures, and I went back. I mentioned my mother. So I was looking back at her memorial service that was in the year 2002. And also looking for pictures of Leslie with my father's, Uncle Harold's service in 2004. I found those pictures, they're small. I didn't get them to you, Rebecca, but I'll put them on the table. But anyway, but the reason I was looking for those pictures and wanted to see them again was it's reinforcing a theme that almost everyone here is saying, but I want to say it again, Leslie was there. Leslie was there. She made the long trips. Leslie drove more miles to more places than any human being. I really, truly, I can't compare her to anyone. The miles she drove in order to be there. And I remember going up to her, and I can quote her. This is a true quote. I went up to hug her afterwards at my father's ceremony because I wanted to thank her for being there. She had made a miracle night trip from Kensington and was in Columbus, Ohio at that time. So I went up to hug her, and Leslie said, "Of course I'm here. It's Uncle Harold." So I really think, when I think of Leslie, what I think of most of all, and I wanted to say is, of course I'm here. Of course I'm here. I hope I'm going to finish. I only want to say one more thing if I could say it, and that is, Leslie, we love you. Of course you were there for us, for all the family, for the Clarys, the Wanners, the Weavers, the Lindsays, families and friends. Of course you were there. And I'm going to say this today. Of course, we're here today for you, and we feel your presence here today, and we always will.
Well, I'm from the other side of the family. I'm Kathy Hines. I'm Leslie's in-law, sister-in-law. And I wanted to share today a memory that I have of Leslie back at our lake house in Cicero, Indiana. And when I think of Leslie, I thought, well, maybe I didn't get it right. But today, people are talking about the things I remember. I recall that although Leslie made pies without a lot of sugar, she liked cookies as well as the next person. Our mom, Ken's and mine, her husband, had always made double batches of chocolate chip cookies and put them in containers and placed them in the freezer. Now you might think that this is just for another time and that they would be consumed at a special event. But on one particular visit, after Leslie had been in the family for a few years, her patience had worn thin. She made the comment that she never got a cookie. The container would be there, but when she went back to it, thinking the cookies would be thawed and edible, the container would be empty, and all the cookies had been eaten in the frozen state. After explaining this to her, she put her problem-solving skills to work, and the next time a container came out of the freezer, she grabbed a frozen cookie and placed it in the microwave. I don't know why, but she didn't pick up with the in-laws family event of eating frozen cookies. I remember spending a lot of time in the kitchen with Leslie when we'd visit. She was always preparing food lovingly that she had picked with care. My mom spoke of, that Mom would pick out a carrot or a rutabaga or some vegetable, and Mom would begin chopping it, but Leslie would pick it up with loving care and caress her vegetables. So thank you for letting me share today, and Leslie is here.
I wrote every word down here just to help me get through it. My name is Jennifer. I think I was going by Jen when I met Leslie. I was 14. Rachel and I went to high school together. The rest is history. So a lot of you I don't know, but it's very interesting to hear. I don't know the stories, but I know the woman that you're talking about. I've been calling Leslie my second mom for a long time. When I would tell people about her, I would usually include a joke about how I practically lived at her house. Or I would say, oh yeah, Leslie took me grocery shopping and she let me pick out the ice cream because she knew I would eat it. As I got older, when I would try to explain how important she was to me, I started talking about the time when Leslie bought my wedding dress. And she realized we didn't have a lot of money to spend on the ceremony. So she let me borrow her diamond necklace to wear so I could have some nice jewelry. But those aren't the real reasons that I call her my mom. I met Leslie at a pretty dark time in my life. There was a lot of bad stuff going on with my own family. And the reason I practically lived in her house was because I didn't want to go. Leslie wasn't my mom because she bought me ice cream. Or because she even invited me on a family vacation to the legendary Ark that you all love so much. I feel pretty amazing that I got to go. She was my mom because she gave me a safe home when my home was falling apart. And she didn't think twice about it. She just took me in and I was her daughter.
Hi. My name is Eric Collier. I'm related to Leslie through her Uncle Kenneth Clary, who is my uncle by marriage. I want to share a few words with you about my relations with Leslie over my lifetime. In my youth, I would meet Leslie and her sisters when I visited my Aunt Eileen and Uncle Kenneth Clary in Ohio. And after my mother died, I visited the Wanner home up in Cleveland, and with Auntie Eileen and Uncle Kenneth, and Peg and Jim, as well as Leslie, were so kind to me. Then when my Aunt Eileen Clary passed away, years after that, at the wake, Leslie came up and put her arms around me and comforted me, something I always remember. But the closest bond I developed with Leslie was in recent years, when we formed an alliance to do all we could to see to the well-being of Uncle Kenneth. I had the confidence to investigate the resources available for our uncle, knowing that I was not in this endeavor by myself. Leslie's devotion to her Uncle Kenneth and to our cousin Keith remains an inspiration for me. I will miss you very much, Leslie. Love, Eric.
yonder green valley where streamlets meander, where twilight is fading, I pensively roam, where at the bright noontide in solitude wander, amidst the dark shades of the lonely ash grove. 'Tis there where the blackbird is cheerfully singing, each warbler entranced with its notes from the tree. Ah, then little think I of sorrow or sadness, the ash grove enchanting spells beauty for me. Down yonder green valley where streamlets meander, where twilight is fading, I pensively roam, where at the bright noontide in solitude wander, amidst the dark shades of the lonely ash grove. 'Tis there where the blackbird is cheerfully singing, each warbler entranced with its notes from the tree. The ash grove enchanting spells beauty for me.
We miss our Leslie on that. She was one of the high parts.
Ooh, hello. Feel free to pass Kleenex.
I'm honored to be here, Leslie. I haven't had the tears until today, so I think there's going to be a flood. Leslie and I shared our lives with each other for 48 years. We met each other in 7th grade in home ec. And I love the stories everyone's telling because I remember them. And I really love that you read from the prophet because I found the prophet that Leslie and I used to read from. It was so perfect. That was the most amazing thing. I actually was going to pick what you picked. It felt so good. We graduated early from high school because it didn't suit us. It's true. Leslie probably had the idea and I just followed along because she somehow ended up at Miami and I couldn't get accepted anywhere. She was always like that in some way. I mean, I thought she was brilliant. I didn't know it though because she was so unassuming. We both had this great history class that we loved. It was very challenging. Most classes were not challenging for her. We found it challenging together. But the night before the exam, we went out in the woods and, I don't know, picked leaves or something like that and didn't study, which didn't matter to her. She still got the A, but I didn't. But she was always unassuming with her really bright ideas and philosophical streams of thought. I love them, and our letters were all filled with those all the time. I got a birthday letter every year, and she got one from me. We were there for each other as we had our babies, as we had our different jobs and our houses. She helped me build a house up in Michigan. We moved countries, and we were there for each other. We didn't ride the bus to school. You're exactly right. Because it was polluting the air. For 3 years, only 3 years for me. It sounds like she did it for 5. So again, it was her idea. As I was remembering all these things in the last month, every night I would sleep and wake up with new stories. I just loved it. It's like she was with me. And I saw these stories, and I saw that we were walking, always walking. We were walking together and talking through the years in Ohio, in Platte Lake, in the Scandinavian forest, at Lake Chautauqua, Tromsø, Stockholm, Estonia, Oslo. I was exhausted by the time I woke up. Eventually, as you heard, Leslie had a pedometer to keep track of her steps and sent me one too. I also didn't get it programmed. It was out of my drawer forever to remind me, but I couldn't figure out how to program it. And with those steps we took, we shared our love and our stories. Because of Leslie, I love popcorn and lentil soup. She was the best vegetarian cook ever. I loved reading in bed. I loved walking in the rain, peeling and slowly eating a grapefruit, sleeping in a tent in the smell of the pine forest. Because of Leslie, I'm an activist, a supporter of the underdog. I know the names of birds and trees, some in 2 languages. Leslie showed me how to make a blueberry pie in a cake pan, to bravely face a life-threatening illness and not become that illness. Leslie showed me how to surf the small and large changes in life, fall down, get back up, smile, and say, life is good. Leslie showed me how to embrace the moment, friends, and family, as if nothing else existed or mattered. Family is so important, she would say, and lived by. Leslie, my confident sister, truest friend, historian of my life, we will miss you with all our hearts. I will miss you. Dear friend, with all my heart. Words cannot say it loud enough or deep enough. So, I will look for you in my life in new ways. I will hear you in the call of that phoebe bird. I will hear the answers that come to me spontaneously as I ponder the question I face in life, and I will know it's coming from you. I will know you in the smell of blueberry pie and fresh rain. Let it go, my friend, my truest. Let it sail on silver wings. Life's a twinkling, and that's for certain. But it's such a fine thing. There's a gathering of spirits. There's a festival of friends. And we will take up where we left off when we meet again. I can't explain it. I couldn't if I tried. How the only things we carry are the things we hold inside. Like a day out in the rain, like the love we won't forget, like the laughter we started, and it hasn't died down yet. Oh yeah. Now didn't we make it shine? Aren't we standing in the center of something rare and fine? We're never really all that far from those we love and miss. Yes, there is a gathering of spirits. There's a festival of friends. And we'll take up where we left off when we meet again. I love you, Leslie. Thank you.
I'm Manzara, and this is my husband, John Marito. And if I don't get through this, he's going to pick up for me. We had the good fortune to work with Leslie in the lab in Berkeley. And then again, that was many years ago. And then it turned out that we wound up on the East Coast, and Leslie wound up on the East Coast. And that was like finding gold, having her friendship back. But anyway, let me see if we can get through this. If this were a Star Wars movie and Yoda was here, he would say of Leslie, the Force is strong in this one. And that's why it's so hard to cope with her death. It seems inconceivable that she could not be here. So although I've lost many people in my life, I'm having a really hard time. Leslie. So, what can comfort me, and maybe you at this moment? After I lost my parents, I did a lot of thinking, reading, and grieving. And one thing that I learned is that in grief, we sometimes take on some of the characteristics of the people that we're grieving. Although my parents weren't saints, understatement, I realized, and so much different than Leslie, anyway, I realized that I could honor their memories by trying to carry forward their best qualities in my own life. We all know what wonderful qualities Leslie had, and we've talked about them here. But I would say let's talk about them now in the context of carrying them forward. Leslie had, in my mind, first and foremost, a joyous heart, a love of life, and an inquisitive and playful nature. Some of her most endearing qualities were honesty, integrity, and as many people have said, a truly unfailing devotion to people she loved, and also a love and reverence for the natural world. She also had unfailing energy, fearlessness, and a desire to live life to the fullest. And those characteristics led her to do something that most women in science, when we met Leslie in graduate school, were too scared to do, and that is to have children. When John and I met Leslie, she was a grad student in Willie Gruesom's lab in Berkeley. And if you were a woman in science at that time, there were precious few role models for people who could blend a family with a career in academics. Leslie showed us how, and in the process brought lots of joy to folks by sharing Joff and Rachel with us. And one of the other postdocs who worked in the lab was Birgit Pischua. She was from Germany. She had the good fortune to work across the bench from Leslie. And so Birgit went on to become a professor in Germany, to have 3 children. And she wrote a book called Professor and Mother. Do these things go together? And in the foreword to her book, she quoted something Leslie said to her across the lab bench when Leslie was pregnant with Rachel. And she said, "Children never fit. Not when you are in college, not during your PhD, not when you're a postdoc, not when you are a professor, but children are the most important things for people." So thank heavens that Leslie felt like that. Not only could she show others how to do it, but if she hadn't been so fearless, we wouldn't have gotten Rachel. We're so happy we did. So to honor Leslie, we can try, being the imperfect beings that we all are, to carry forward some of her wonderful qualities, and in the process we'll become better people and bring more joy to the world. Now finally, I want to leave you with a quote from my father that seems apropos in light of how much the Wanner family loves to sing. So what he said, this was at a similar gathering to this many years ago. He said, "I believe that our family lives through the ages, and that persons come into it and persons leave it. and it's like a grand choir with all voices heard. And the voices of those who leave soar into the ether and join the harmonics of the universe where they will live forever.
Well, I'm Andy Jensen. I'm a friend of Leslie's, and Joffrey has me on the program with a work perspective, so I'll start with that bit. I met Leslie in about 2002 through potato research. That's what she did here. And a couple of stories about that is one, the first time I ever met her was at one of our potato conferences, and she impressed me with how smart she was, which a lot of people have talked about so far today. But after every presentation, regardless of what the subject matter was, Leslie's hand is up, and she's asking a question, and it's a pretty usually a difficult question, but asked in a really kind way, and it just impressed the heck out of me. So, as far as being exhausting, Joffrey mentioned it at the beginning. I bet for the graduate students, who are given their first presentation and they see that this is going to come, and they're sitting in the audience and they know Leslie's going to ask them something. I'm nervous. But she was really gentle with them and kind, no matter how difficult the questions. And another thing that I got to do in my potato research stuff is bring farmers from where I live. I live now in Idaho, but most of the time I've known Leslie. I lived in Washington, and I got to bring farmers that I work with to visit Beltsville. And I would always make sure to take them to Leslie's lab when we were doing research visits, because she was just fabulous at explaining scientific things to lay people, and she would show them around the lab and every step of everything. And they would come away understanding something that they'd never understood before. So they'd heard a term like PCR or something. Farmers don't know what that is. But after leaving her office, they would understand what it means. And she was always so kind and gentle to them. And one of the things that I wanted to mention too is that ever since I've known Leslie, I wanted to be as smart as she is. So the other day, I was looking, I always carry a science magazine around with me. And so today I'm bringing it as a prop. I wasn't actually reading it on the screen. But I was looking at I had to renew my science subscription, and I saw that it was from 2004 when I first started reading this. And I first subscribed to Science like the day after coming home from visiting Leslie, because she had it all over her office and she had stuff on the wall. She was such an unabashed science freak like me. And so we loved talking about science for a long time. And so yeah, I've been reading Science magazine. I carried everywhere with me for 10 years now because of Leslie. Some of the rest of this I may read, but Leslie meant a lot to me in the last 5 years. We became really good friends. And I have a quote here, because I was trying to think, isn't there a cliche about adversity bringing people closer together? So I found this quote that's supposedly Ulysses S. Grant. I don't know whether it is or isn't, but it's a good quote. "The friend in my adversity I shall always cherish most. I can better trust those who helped to relieve the gloom of my dark hours than those who are so ready to enjoy with me the sunshine of my prosperity." So Leslie and I became pretty good friends over the last 5 years or so. Started when I called her. I needed help with a work project, and she had just come down with cancer. And I was going through a divorce and had a bunch of other family trouble going on. And she offered me all kinds of support in the most kind and friendly way. And and at the time, my brother had just come through cancer, so I was able to tell her stories about our family's cancer experience, and she offered me lots of words of support. And one of the things she said to me then over and over, and that I think of every day, even now, is she said, "Be gentle with yourself." And so literally every day I think about that, because it's super important. And since that time, every time Leslie and I get together, we go out and eat Indian food together, because since that time I learned that she likes Indian food, and that's the only kind of food I really like is Indian food. And cooking, we talked about cooking and nutrition, and we share very similar love of the outdoors and nature and science, and we would get together and stay up really late talking about those things. And Joffrey called us kindred spirits, and the more that I hear people talk about it, the more that I realize that's true. So I'm really glad to be able to come here today and for Joffrey letting me speak. And thanks to everybody for coming.
Thank you all for sharing your memories, and I'll promise I'll be brief, and then we can go eat food. We do have some Indian food. So, it looks like you might need some food as well, Skinny. All right. Nearly every day of my life, Mom told me life is not fair. So, I was in a sense prepared for this unfairness, which feels as though it has robbed us of such a vibrant person, so dedicated to health, to life, to learning, and love. What Mom didn't teach me is that while life is not fair, death is. While the circumstances of our lives are vastly different, we all do die. Death is the ultimate equalizer. Her final days are not what I wish most to remember about her, but there was much that I learned during that time. As I watched this most capable person give up her abilities, I learned about grace. And I learned about letting go. I kept coming back to Mary Oliver's poem, In Blackwater Woods, which Rachel read for you. To live in this world, you must be able to do three things. To love what is mortal, to hold it against your bones, because your life depends on it. And when the time comes to let it go, to let it go. Words are perhaps not the best way to pay tribute to my mother. They sit too still upon the page and cannot do justice to her constant action. Yet she loved words, and she spent much of her time curating her own love of literature, reading and writing scientific papers, like science, and also cultivating that same love of words in Rachel and I, reading to us each night for many, many years. And so words were to her and are to me ultimately an expression of love. Mom gave to me perhaps the greatest gift a parent can. She taught me to learn. But more than that, she let me learn. She saw the flame and knew its burn, yet let me touch it myself, not out of pleasure for seeing my agony, but in appreciation for the lesson learned. She was there to help me understand the searing pain and then the throbbing aftermath. She was there to help me solve the wound, gauze, and care for it. I have to read this because there's no way. She was there to help me solve the wound, cause, and care for it. She was there to watch me break my own heart, but help me understand the ache and heal the pain. Her capacity for empathy and willingness to help those in need was as large as her endless pool of energy. She gave freely of her time, of her knowledge, of her money, and as much as possible of her delicious food. Mom had a charismatic dedication to her principles. Her courage was inspirational. As a young girl, she gave up eating meat, forcing her to make her own meals. She wore jeans or short skirts to school, even when that wasn't allowed. And when older professors told her she didn't belong in graduate school, pregnant with me, she had 2 children and still finished her doctorate from Berkeley, producing work that's still relevant today. Skiing in Norway was not for the faint of heart, but off she went, confident that she'd find her way up and down just about anything with enough perseverance. For that matter, moving from the Midwest to a foreign country far north of the Arctic Circle takes some guts. In her unrelenting dedication to family and to science and her work, she was forced to make difficult decisions, and, as are we all, her life was sculpted by the weighting of her priorities. Even as she lived, she could not find enough hours in the day to accomplish what she wanted to do each day. And this lesson I've learned well. There are more things to do, to be interested in, more things to learn and to do than each day can possibly hold. Had she lived 100 more years, I'm sure she would have felt this frenetic lust for life each moment of that time. It's this joy, this joie de vivre, that I will remember the most, in which I will carry from her. And so, quoting Mary Oliver again, I ask each of you, tell me, what is it you plan to do with this one wild and precious life? We're gonna play a recording of her mother singing the Lord's Prayer, and then there's food.
food is in there.